In October 2015, something happened in the Middle East that military historians said was impossible. Russian warplanes took off from Iranian air bases. Iranian troops coordinated with Russian special forces. Turkish intelligence shared data with both, and North African nations quietly aligned with this axis. For the first time in recorded human history, this exact coalition existed, not metaphorically, not symbolically. Literally, Western intelligence agencies scrambled to understand what was happening, because this alliance made no strategic sense. Russia and Persia had been enemies for centuries. Turkey and Iran fought wars for generations. North African states had no historical reason to align with Moscow, but they did. And then a researcher opened an ancient text, a text written 2,600 years ago, by a Jewish priest in Babylonian exile, a man who had never seen a map of modern nations, who had never heard of Russia, who couldn't have known what military alliances would look like in 2015. But he wrote this: Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, all with shields and helmets. Also Gomer with all its troops, and Beth Togarmah from the far north with all its troops, the many nations with you. Ezekiel 38, 5-6. Persia, that's modern Iran. Cush and Put, that's Sudan, Ethiopia, Libya. Gomer and Beth Togarmah, that's Turkey and the Armenian region. And then Ezekiel says the coalition is led by a power from the far north. You will come from your place in the far north, you and many nations with you. Ezekiel 38:15. If you draw a line directly north from Jerusalem, it doesn't stop at Syria. It doesn't stop at Turkey. It goes straight through one capital, Moscow. Today you're going to see something that will challenge everything you thought you knew about biblical prophecy. Because this isn't about interpreting symbols. This is about reading a map that didn't exist when Ezekiel wrote it. A map that didn't exist during Jesus' ministry. A map that didn't exist during the Roman Empire, the Crusades, the Ottoman Empire, or even the Cold War, but exists right now. What is the exact geography Ezekiel named? Who is this nation from the far north? Ezekiel wasn't a politician. He wasn't a military strategist. He was a priest. Born into the priestly line in Jerusalem, he was among the Jewish elite taken captive to Babylon in 597 BC. And there, by the Kibar River, in a foreign land, God began showing him visions of Israel's future, visions of judgment, visions of restoration, and visions of a war that would involve nations Ezekiel had never seen unite. Ezekiel 38 and 39 form one of the most detailed prophetic passages in Scripture. It's not symbolic apocalyptic imagery like Daniel's beasts. It's not coded like Revelation's numbers. It's geographic, it's tactical. It reads like an intelligence briefing. Ezekiel describes who will invade Israel, when it will happen, in the latter years, why they'll come, for plunder, how God will respond, direct divine intervention. But what makes this prophecy impossible to dismiss is the coalition itself, because Ezekiel doesn't say enemies from the north. He names them: Magog, Meshech, Tubal, Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, Beth Togarmah. These aren't symbols. They're ancient tribal and territorial names that correspond to modern nations. And when you map them, the pattern becomes undeniable. Let's do what biblical scholars, military historians, and intelligence analysts have been doing for decades. Let's map the names Ezekiel gave. Persia. This is the easiest. Persia is modern-day Iran. The name Persia was used until 1935 when it officially became Iran. But the territory, the people, the cultural identity, unchanged. Cush. This was the ancient kingdom south of Egypt, modern Sudan and Ethiopia. Biblical Cush corresponds to the region spanning the Upper Nile. Put, ancient Libya. Some scholars extend it to include parts of Algeria and Tunisia, the North African coast west of Egypt. Gomer. This is trickier. Gomer was a people group that settled in what is now central and eastern Turkey. Some historical records place them in parts of southern Russia and the Caucasus region. Beth Togarmah, another people group from the Armenian highlands and eastern Turkey. Ancient sources place them near modern-day Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now notice something. Not one of these nations is from Western Europe. Not one is from the Americas. Not one is from East Asia. Every single name Ezekiel gives is either Middle Eastern, North African, or Eurasian, and they all form a geographic crescent around Israel. But they're not acting alone. Ezekiel makes that clear. You will come from your place in the far north, you and many nations with you. Ezekiel 38:15. Far north, from Israel's position. If you take a map and draw a line straight north from Jerusalem, where does it go? Not to Europe, not to Scandinavia, straight through the heartland of one nation, Russia. The leader from the far north is Russia. Here's where this gets impossible to ignore. In Ezekiel's time, 597 BC, this alliance made no sense. Persia and the northern tribes were not allies. They were rivals, often enemies. Cush and Put had no political or military relationship with Persia or the northern kingdoms. This coalition did not exist. Fast forward to Jesus' time, 1st century AD. Rome controlled the region. Persia, Parthia, was Rome's enemy. This coalition still didn't exist. Move to the Middle Ages. Islamic caliphates rose and fell. The Ottomans dominated Turkey and the Levant. Persia became Safavid Iran. Still no coalition. The Ottoman Empire era, Turkey controlled the region. Persia remained separate. Russia expanded south but never formed this alliance. World War I and II, different alignments entirely. The Cold War, the Soviet Union and Iran were adversaries after 1979. This coalition never existed, not once, not in 2,600 years of recorded history. But then, 2015 happened. Russia and Iran signed a military cooperation agreement. Russian jets began using Iranian bases. Turkey, despite being a NATO member, began purchasing Russian military systems. North African nations received Russian arms and funding, and the coalition Ezekiel described formed. The geography Ezekiel named is now aligned for the first time in history. Ezekiel wasn't just describing an alliance, he was describing a specific type of warfare. Look again at how he phrases it. Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them. Ezekiel 38:5. With them, not leading them, not equal partners, with them. This is what modern military analysts call proxy warfare. One nation leads. Others support, supply, fund, and fight under that leadership. And that's exactly the structure we see today. Russia leads. Russia provides strategic military direction in Syria, Libya, and parts of Africa. Iran supports. Iran finances militias, provides arms, and coordinates operations. The IRGC operates in Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Lebanon. Turkey navigates. Turkey plays both sides, maintaining NATO membership while purchasing Russian S-400 systems and coordinating in Syria. North African nations align. Libya, Sudan, and others receive Russian mercenaries, Wagner Group, arms, and economic aid. Ezekiel described a coalition structure that matches modern proxy warfare, a model that didn't exist in ancient warfare. Ancient coalitions were equal alliances or vassal states. This is different. This is coordinated asymmetric alignment. And Ezekiel described it 2,600 years ago. Ezekiel isn't alone in describing this. Psalm 83 mentions a confederation of nations conspiring against Israel. Daniel 11 speaks of conflicts involving the king of the north and the king of the south. Joel and Zechariah describe invasions and divine intervention. But Ezekiel 38 is the only passage that names the coalition members, describes the geography, specifies the leader's origin, far north, details God's direct intervention, and Ezekiel adds a timing marker that cannot be ignored. In future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. Ezekiel 38:8. Read that again. A land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations, which had long been desolate. Israel was destroyed in 70 AD by Rome. The Jewish people were scattered across the world for almost 1,800 years. The land was desolate. And then, May 14th, 1948, Israel was restored. Jews returned from over 100 nations. The land that had been desolate was inhabited again. Ezekiel's prophecy required two things to be true. Israel had to exist again. This coalition had to form. Both were impossible for 2,500 plus years. Both are now reality. This channel does not set dates. We don't claim Ezekiel 38 is fulfilling right now. We don't know the day or the hour of any prophetic event. But what we can say is this. Before 1948, Ezekiel 38 could not have been fulfilled. Israel didn't exist. Before 2015, this coalition had never existed. Not once in 2,600 years. Now both conditions are present. Does that mean the invasion is imminent? No. Does it mean we're in the final generation? We don't know. But does it mean the pieces Ezekiel described are now on the board? Yes. And that should cause us to do what Jesus commanded. Watch. Jesus told his disciples, "Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door." Matthew 24:32-33. He wasn't telling them to panic. He was telling them to recognize the season. Watching doesn't mean fear. It means awareness. It means living with spiritual clarity. It means understanding that history isn't random. It has an author. It has a plan, and it has a conclusion. So what do? We live faithfully. We watch prayerfully. We hold on to hope, because the same God who told Ezekiel what was coming is the same God who holds you today. So let's return to the question we started with. How could Ezekiel describe a military alliance that only became possible in the 21st century? There are only two options. Option 1. Ezekiel made an extraordinarily lucky guess. He randomly named nations that happened to align 2,600 years later in a configuration that never existed before. He guessed the structure of proxy warfare. He guessed Israel would be restored. He guessed the geography, all by chance. Option 2. Ezekiel saw what God showed him, and what God showed him was real. God is sovereign over history. He doesn't just predict the future, he orchestrates it. Nations rise and fall at his command. Alliances form and fracture according to his will. And what he reveals to his prophets comes to pass. Ezekiel didn't guess. He saw. And what he saw is unfolding. Russia from the far north. The coalition is visible. The map is real. Ezekiel 38 doesn't end with the invasion. It ends with God's intervention. This is what will happen in that day. When Gog attacks the land of Israel, my hot anger will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. Ezekiel 38-18. God himself defends Israel, not their army, not their allies. God. And Ezekiel 39 describes the aftermath, total destruction of the invading forces. 7 months to bury the dead, 7 years to burn the weapons. The message is clear. God is in control. If you're seeing these patterns for the first time, don't let fear take root. Let hope rise, because the God who revealed the future to Ezekiel is the same God who knows your name, who holds your life, who promises to be with you. If this spoke to you, write in the comments. I want to understand the text. And if you want to know what happens after this coalition is destroyed, there's another chapter we need to walk through together.